All right, today we're going to talk about pulling back, cinchy horses, all in my opinion, constrictive type pressure issues. So a saddle is something that's constrictive. It's going to be on there. It's not going to go anywhere. And so a horse has to get used to that. So the cinchy stuff kind of, revolves around that. I think horses that are typically cinchy are also ones that'll pull back and also ones that wouldn't want to be hobbled. So today we're just going to mostly focus on pulling back issues. This horse is 16 years old and he pulls back all the time. And so this would be a good time to kind of talk about it. The one thing that I would recommend doing if you're going to try to fix this is take your saddle off, and that'll make, basically give you a little bit of peace of mind if they were to get into some trouble. That way, if they were to flip over, they're not going to break your saddle. So today we're not going to bug him too much, but just know, take your saddle off if you can do this a lot. One thing that I think about with constrictive pressure type stuff is you're not going to fix it in one day, and you just need to know that. And so if you have big expectations and goals that, by next week, he's not going to pull back anymore, or by next week, he's not going to be cinchy, that's just not realistic. So keep that in mind. But when I do pulling back issues, the one thing I do is make sure that I don't set them up to fail. So if I go somewhere like this, a panel, and I go and tie him, not only can he stick his legs through, if you were, to pull back, he can't quite get his head through, but he can get into some trouble. This also makes a lot of racket. So there's a lot of movement. So if you're going to tie one like hard, even with a slip knot, try to tie them somewhere as high as you can with a solid, wall in front of them. So I like to, just as a rule of thumb, always tie higher than their wither. That way, if they do sit back and get worried, they at least sit down instead of straight back. It's a lot harder to rear up and get in a bind when you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him up here. And he acts all quiet and nice. And all I'm going to do for him to make sure to not set him up to fail is I'm going to wrap him as much as possible until he starts pulling out of his wraps. And so there's multiple ways to wrap. I'm going to come around here. I'll just actually do it right here. You can wrap around the rope, or you can wrap around your post or bar like this. I like to wrap around the rope because it's a little slower. That way, it kind of can be almost useless if you just wrap like this, because if, he wants to just walk off, he just rips it out of there. So what I do is I just kind of count my wraps. So I'm just going to wrap him what I would call 3 times. 3 times he's going to have to be pretty deliberate about pulling out of this. But if you were to get worried, it will work this way. The reason why pulling back becomes an issue that gets worse and worse and worse is they feel constricted. And then once they feel constricted, they feel like they have to do something. And so they kind of have a temper tantrum / panic attack. And if you can limit the amount of constriction that they feel by letting them go back, you'll probably almost fix it just like that. So what I do for the most part with this horse, knowing that he pulls back, I almost never tie him. Now, can you say, is that actually fixing the problem? I don't know. But what I do know is if he will stand wrapped like that, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to, make him want to pull back. If he were to get worried, that would pull. When his feet would move, he would calm down. No big deal. Same thing that you use with the cinching problem. If you give them some illusion of control or actual control of their balance in their feet, those panic attacks, that real bracy behavior that gets really dangerous basically disappears. So that's kind of my first thing that I do. And see, I don't try to go flag him or do something to try to get him bothered. I just kind of let him do that right there, mostly for that idea of not setting him up to fail. Then once I feel like that's working good, maybe he hasn't pulled back in a long time, then I'm going to try to challenge this theory, because I'm not always going to be standing there with him when a bird flies up and scares him, or for some reason he just wants to pull back. And so what I can do is I can grab a long lead line, which I brought over here, and I can clip him to this. Now, I would recommend, if you can get one of these that's, an actual line instead of this flat braid, I would do that. You can clip that in here, same idea, wrap it around. Now this gives him this much more room to find his feet. So when he gets panicky, you won't completely lose him. You wrap it the same way, or you wrap it around the post and let him get bothered and worried. And once he gets relaxed, take him back up there. Before long, he's really not going to want to do it because he's not bothered anymore. He knows, if I get really worried, there's some, grace back there. So that's kind of my approach to pulling back. It's really slow, but it does work. So if you like this video and want to see more videos just like this, please like and subscribe to the Startup Cowboy channel.